Yeah, first of all, thank you for joining this morning. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen into this webinar today. Today, I'm going to be talking about 10 features that your website must have in 2021 to improve conversions. Just a few things before we begin, and there's a few more people join the webinar as well. I just want to let you know that we're recording this webinar. So after it's finished, hopefully within the next day or two, we'll be able to send you a recording of the webinar and a copy of our slide deck as well. So feel free just to listen in for now, and I'll send you a reminder of everything that I've talked about within the next day or two. If throughout the webinar you could just stay muted, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions towards the end. Please just submit questions as and when you'd like throughout the webinar. So don't wait till the end, just at any point you want, just fire some questions into the chat and I'll happily answer them towards the end if time allows. And then also just to mention the fact that I'm going to cover this topic broadly today. So I fully appreciate the fact that there'll be lots of different organizations represented here today, lots of different purposes of their digital presence. And therefore, you know, I'm trying to kind of cover this and touch all bases. So bear with me if some of the points aren't overly relevant to your particular organization, but I hope out of the 10 that the vast majority are ones that you can take away and use on your website. So what's the plan? The plan for the next kind of 45 minutes or so is to just share with you a little bit of our philosophy, to actually kind of run through the 10 features that I think the website or your website should have, and then obviously have a time for questions. So why am I talking on this topic? You know, just to kind of introduce myself, my name is Will. I'm the founder and managing director of an agency called Webbox. Now, the reason I've put a photo of myself here is because my hair is shorter there in that photo than it is today, because obviously all of our barbers are closed. So I thought I'd give you the better look of that rather than what I have today, which is far too much hair. So let's delve into a few things. Before I just delve into philosophy, just use the chat feature just once more. And just kind of share with me why you're kind of listening into this webinar today. So whether it's just generally that you're interested, or whether you're looking to make changes to your website at the moment, or you're interested in current trends, whatever that might be, just use the chat feature once again, just to share with me, you know, what's attracted you to the webinar today. That'd be really helpful. Okay, so where am I coming from for this webinar? So I think this is important to share, because ultimately this is what's going to infuse the 10 features that I share with you today. So the philosophy that I use and we use here at Webbox is threefold. We want to hypothesize, test, and pivot, and we want to keep repeating that all of the time. Okay, so for us, we believe that every digital product and campaign should go through regular iterations, you know, using this kind of three-tier model. So what we appreciate as well is that sometimes every time a particular test happens and a change happens, it might give positive results and it might move us forward. On the flip side, it might actually, you know, kind of lessen the kind of impact, and therefore we might want to roll back. But it's through that process that we find out what is going to improve conversions on our website. So if you're going to take a few things away from the webinar today, make this be the first point, where you always hypothesize, test, and you pivot to make sure that you're constantly evolving your website. And just bear in mind that every small change will end up having a big difference within your organization. So you might have a 0.1% gain in a particular area, but actually across the business that might extrapolate to something much larger. So this is where I'm coming from. And something else that I just want to touch on before we get into it is, today I want to forego the basics. Okay, so you know, we know that websites should have good content, and we know that they should be, you know, should have a good design. and a clear navigation, and they should be mobile compatible. And I don't want to touch on these things today because I don't want you to kind of walk away thinking, well, I kind of knew that already, Will. I want to give you some things which you can really think about, chew the fat on it, and take away and say, right, let's actually implement this for our website. So hopefully there's some really good stuff in there for you. So without further ado, let's get into the meat of it and start going through the 10 features which I think your website should have this year. Okay, so the first one is advanced tracking. Okay, so we can't begin to actually say, right, what should our website have to improve its performance without actually learning from data. Okay, so the really important thing here is that we've got our eyes opened to what is the current state of play. Now, this is super important because otherwise you're just going to make assumptions. And sometimes those assumptions might be right, and you might have a really good gut feeling. But actually, on the flip side, you might kind of go off on the wrong path. So our principle at Webbox is that we want to make decisions based on data so that they're informed decisions. So always make sure that you've got your eyes open through really good tracking. Now, of course, you would have all heard of something called Google Analytics. This is a tracking tool which most websites have. And what I want to kind of just encourage you to do today is actually just take that one step further if you have that set up on a website already. So what I'd encourage you to do is track events and user flows. So what do I mean by that? So first of all, if you do event tracking, you can actually track how many times someone has maybe clicked on a particular button or a particular call to action, and you can actually get a good feel as to what's working and what's not on your website. So to use an elementary example, you might have a contact us button on the website. Now, tracking how many times people click on that will allow you to then make informed decisions as to what you do with that button and how prominent you make it within the design. And then user flows are also really important. Now, these are kind of visual representations of how a user flows through your website. So you'll see that they might land on a homepage initially, and they might go through to an About Us page and a Services page, and at some point they might well drop off. And actually understanding that journey and learning from it is imperative to improving the website's content, layout, structure, calls to action, to ultimately improve the conversions. So actually having Google Analytics is great, but take it one step further and make sure that these things are put in place. Another tool that you might want to use is one called Hotjar. Now, this is a tool which has both free and paid plans, and Hotjar is a great tool for tracking how people interact with your website. So it actually kind of takes things a few steps further. And it does things like screen recording, where it'll actually record the whole screen and you can see how a user engages with your website. Now that's great because you get to see almost where their eyes move, because that's normally where their mouse moves as well. And you get to see where the blocking points are as well on the website. But it also does things like heat mapping as well, so you know where the user's attention is drawn. So that's a great tool to use. If you haven't got that on the website, I definitely say to put Hotjar on the website as a standard. And then finally, with all of this kind of advanced tracking, because obviously you can take this as far as you want, it's really important that you then have that data compiled into simple and easy to understand reports so that you can make quick decisions. And using this principle of hypothesize, test, and pivot, you can actually undertake that process. What I guess you don't want is lots of data thrown at you and there's loads of different numbers going everywhere and you're not quite sure what decision to make. So it's really important to have the data presented back to you in a really simple way so that you can make informed decisions. So that's advanced tracking. I'm sure you've all got tracking in place at the moment, but I would just encourage you to take it one step forward this year in order to improve conversions. Okay, number 2, speed is king. Okay, this is something which is of utmost importance to every website at the moment. I don't think one website from any organization will fall outside of this. So we all know that users won't hang around. Our kind of patience with the website is very, very slim. So I just want to kind of throw a few stats at you which are relevant and up to date, just to kind of put this in perspective. So 1 in 4 users will abandon a website, which takes more than 4 seconds to load. Okay, so literally just 1, 2, 3, 4, and you've lost your user. They've gone. Okay, that's literally the amount of time that you've got. So your website has to load very quickly across all different connection types in order to keep the user on your website. 46% of users won't actually revisit. So if you've given them a poor experience initially, the chances of them coming back are slim. Okay, so this is really important because ultimately the purpose of all of our websites is to bring returning visitors back time and time again. A 1 second delay reduces customer satisfaction by 16%. So I was reading this stat earlier in the year, just like a few weeks ago, and I kid you not, I was just like, that is crazy. That is one heck of a stat. But it's true. So these are all from kind of legitimate sources, which kind of compile this data. So just 1 second will reduce the customer satisfaction by 16%, and that is so important because really every second counts. Okay, so this is where I've got the data from, just in case you want to look into it a bit further. But these are stats which I think should, I guess, help us realize how important it is to make sure our websites load really quickly. Now, coupled with this, the rise of obviously mobile usage is compounding this issue. Okay, so more people statistically will use your website on a mobile device and a tablet device than a traditional desktop. And therefore, we've got to understand that on that mobile device, they might well have a 3G or 4G connection, maybe not Wi-Fi or even 5G. And therefore, we've got to understand that a 3G connection is going to impair their ability to load your website. So we need to keep this into consideration when using large videos, large images, and lots of content on a website. And it especially impacts websites which pull in a lot of data from external sources. And then the final thing to touch on here is the fact that this is important not only from a user experience perspective, but also actually a ranking perspective. So if you want your website to rank highly in Google, Google's made it really clear over the years that speed is important to them. They've come out with lots of tools to help developers test, and they've made it really clear through documentation and blogs that this is of utmost importance to them. So we need to take it seriously. We need to make sure that our websites are benchmarked and tested and optimized so that they load as quickly as possible. Okay, so number 3, a killer one-liner. Okay, so I see this so often. Okay, I'll hit a website, maybe a homepage or a landing page, and I look around and I'm just not sure what that company does. What is it that they actually offer? Okay, so it is imperative to have this kind of killer one-liner, as I call it, to make sure that the user knows what you actually do. So, for example, Webbox's kind of one-liner is we help you plan, design, develop, maintain, market, and monetize brilliant websites. And hopefully in a one-liner, you get a feel for what we do. Now, it doesn't tell you everything, of course, but hopefully it gives you a really good flavor as to what we do. And then at that point, you'll probably make a decision as to whether you want to continue reading or whether maybe you've landed on the wrong website and you need to go back. Now, this is important not only, again, from a user experience perspective, but also from a bounce rate perspective. Now, bounce rate is that statistic where you consider how many people hit a particular page of a website, not necessarily a home page, but it could be, and then they kind of bounce off without navigating further within the website. Now, as a rule of thumb, if you're looking at kind of your own bounce rate through tools like Google Analytics, you kind of can use the stats in front of us on screen now as a bit of a benchmark as to what you're trying to achieve. So anything up to 40% is incredible. It's really, really good. Pat yourself on the back. For those who are kind of like 41 to 55%, you're kind of in the average bracket. Again, it is really good, but obviously there's some improvement which could be made. 56 to 70% is obviously higher than average. And at that point, you might want to be taking some time to look at how you could refine that and improve it. But depending on your type of website, it's worth saying that this might not necessarily be a problem. So it's always worth discussing that with your agency or developer. But anything over 70% is a cause for concern, unless, on the other hand, that you're like a news website or an event website where people hit the page, read the content, and naturally leave the site. So in those instances, that's considered fairly normal. But obviously, if your website doesn't fall into one of those brackets, you might want to look into that. So it's really important to make sure the user knows what your website is about, and that's what this point is all about, a killer one-liner. Okay, number 4, a sticky CTA. So a CTA is a call to action, okay, for those that don't know. And I've got some examples in front of us from websites that I think show this really well. So the example on the left is a website where you would look for a holiday home. And you can see that as you navigate around the website and as you're browsing a particular property, you'll start to read the content about the property. But what sticks to the top of your screen is the call to action, which is to book now. In that middle example, you've got a news website. So this is kind of relevant for any kind of news websites, which are kind of here represented today. And for this particular organization, the 2 clear call to actions that they wanted to make prominent were to get people onto their mailing list, to send them more news and to keep them engaged. And secondly, for them to donate. So those stick to the bottom of the screen on every page, regardless of how far down you are on the page. And then the third example, one which we'll all be familiar with, is Amazon's app. Now, again, they've got sticky call to actions throughout, but what I want to draw our attention to now is actually the 4 icons at the bottom. So they make it really simple for you to navigate around your account area and basket by placing those icons at the bottom. So these are really important because though these are mobile examples, this applies to desktop websites as well. Now, one thing I think, just so you know where I'm coming from with this is we take a bit of a stepping stone approach with kind of our web builds. So we understand that statistically, people aren't going to just land on your website and convert straight away. They're going to have several interactions with you. And on average, we're finding in a number of sectors, that's often 6 to 7 touch points with your brand before you get to a final conversion. So let me put that into reality. That means that they might hit the website, browse around for some time. Another day they might, look you up on Twitter. Another day they might see some post on Instagram. And there'll be 7 interactions before they might come back to your website, read more, and then actually fill out a contact form or buy a product or whatever the particular conversion is for your site. Now, understanding that is the key, because what we need to realize is people often don't just hit the page and convert straight away. So what we often talk about are these kind of soft call to actions, because really the purpose of your website should be to engage with users rather than come across too much on the sales side of things. So you might do that through getting people to sign up to a newsletter mailing list, or kind of coming to an event, or giving them a guide or tutorial, whatever it might be for your particular organization. These softer call to actions are what will help you guide the user through those stepping stones. So yeah, make sure you've got sticky call to actions on a website because it's good for usability, but also consider how you might engage with users more through soft call to actions. Okay, number 5, personalization. So this is something which is becoming very, very popular at the moment, and a lot of websites are considering it. So some of you listening to this might think, do you know what, if I'm gonna have a sausage, I want both mustard and ketchup. And do you know what, for others who are listening to this today, you might think, oh gosh, that is my worst possible choice of food. I would absolutely hate that. But that's fine. We're all different. And really what we need to understand is this principle is also applicable to digital products. So we need to consider the website's user experience, and consider that for each personality type or persona that we might have within our target audience. So it's really important. And I'm just going to talk through a few particular areas of the website that you might be able to do that for. So for example, search results. So if I'm on your website and I'm searching for some content, you might be able to just show me a pragmatic list of search results. And that could be, A to Z, it could be by relevance, it could be for a number of different, sorting methods. But actually, if you're a little bit more intelligent about this, you might put in some personalization tools so that you know what I've been looking at on your website and you get a feel for the kind of user that I am, and you can personalize the results shown to me when I make a search. Another example of this is recommended content. So on a lot of our websites nowadays, we might have things like related articles or related blog posts, related products, or, people also bought this, those kind of things which often appear towards the bottom of a page. And that, again, can be static. You might just say, right, I'm going to always show these particular content pieces, or you might do that by category. But again, to take that one step further, you could do that based on what the user's done on your website before. So if I've been on your e-commerce website, for example, and I've been looking at, saucepans and cutlery, for example, then when you say, you might also be interested in, and then you show me something which is totally irrelevant, like an umbrella, that's probably not going to take my interest. Whereas if you show me, knives or plates, mugs, that is relevant to what I've been looking at, and therefore I'm more likely to click on that. So have a think about how you could use this then for your recommended content. You might do that as well for showing them top blog posts or top videos. So on a content site, you might have a list within the site of, the top 10 videos. And again, you could make that far more personalized by actually making them the top 10 based on the user's behavior, not just the number of views that they've had. And then finally, in just these examples, your landing pages. So you might have heard about split testing landing pages, which is kind of where I'm going with this. But this is where you'd show different kind of forms of landing pages to different users. So user A might come through to your site and they might see landing page A, where user B comes onto the site and they see landing page B. And we do that based on maybe what they've searched to find us, or their behavior on the website, or whatever it might be that you need to use in this instance. So actually personalizing this experience will no doubt improve your conversions and give the user a far better experience on your website. Just a top tip to leave you with, if you're looking to step into this personalization journey and to use this principle of hypothesize, test, and pivot, you might want to look into a tool called Personalize. And what Personalize does is it plugs into your website, it reads all of the data, gathers all of this, and kind of spurts out kind of relevant stuff on your website. So it does all of the heavy lifting for you as like an AI platform. So it's worth having a look at that because that might help you on the road to personalization. Okay, number 6, structured data. So this is something which Google's been using for a long time now, but we're finding still that most websites don't take advantage of it. So this is a way that your developer can include particular structured data within the code of the site. It's by no means complicated and it's not time consuming. But by doing that, you're telling Google to index your content in different areas of a Google search page. So for example, rather than just ranking for a standard search, as you can see from the screenshot here, if your website was, listing recipes, for example, then particular recipes might appear on a SERP. Another example here is where you might do a search as a question in Google, and then there's this section within the SERP where it says people also ask. And people also ask is just almost FAQs from other websites which have been wrapped around with these particular structured data snippets, which allows Google then to pull that data in. And it's a great way to increase traffic to your website through using this data, but also in essence, by having more people come through to your website who are relevant, it will help you increase conversions. So structured data, really simple to put in place, and one which I think everyone again can take from this webinar and implement straight away. Okay, number 7, an SSL certificate. Okay, I don't want to kind of make any assumptions, so just to kind of cover what is an SSL certificate. It's a security certificate which secures your website when data is passed between two parties, and from a user's perspective, it will show a padlock symbol within the browser so that you know the website is secured by an SSL certificate. So I just want to I don't want to make any assumptions, so I just want to cover that. But these are becoming obviously normal now. Back in the day, it would have been kind of maybe just e-commerce websites which had them, or just the big social media networks. But now really we're moving to a HTTPS first world. And this is obviously shown through lots of data which you can find. So one of the leading browsers, Firefox, has released this data very recently, and it shows the increase in web pages loaded through HTTPS. Obviously, it's a really clear graph, doesn't need explaining. You can just see how more and more websites are utilizing an SSL certificate over the years. And just to touch on this graph as well, that actually you can see that Let's Encrypt, which is a provider of these certificates, is issuing up to 2 million certificates per day. So you can understand the kind of volume in which website owners are kind of going to these certificates and getting them. And this is something which you can obtain through your hosting provider or agency or developer if you haven't already. So it's really worth making sure that you've got an SSL certificate in place. But just to touch on the fact, as to why to have one, because some people still will say, I don't think I need one, or I'm not an e-commerce website, so it's not relevant to me. So why actually have an SSL certificate? So I'm just going to touch on this in 3 simple ways. First of all, is for security. Is to make sure that your website passes data around securely. Ultimately, all website owners will want that, because we don't want our websites to be under some sort of attack or compromise. So this is really important. Number 2 is that trust factor. So when users come onto the website and they see that padlock icon, then that's that kind of gives them a bit of trust in the website. Now, if you didn't utilize an SSL certificate and the user was looking at your website on Google Chrome, for example, they will actually see the words "not secure" in the browser. No one wants that, okay? Absolutely no one wants to see that. So really important from a trust perspective to ensure that you've got an SSL certificate. And finally, conversions. It's really obvious that if your users feel that the website is secure and they can trust it, they're far more likely to go through your call to action, whether that's leaving their details, filling out a booking form, buying something online, whatever it is for your particular business, they are far more likely to convert. So really important point. Hopefully this is a simple one you can get in place this year. If you haven't already, make sure you've got an SSL certificate. Okay, number 8, we're drawing towards the latter stages now, so thanks for bearing with me. Number 8, pixels. Okay, so everyone talks about pixels these days. Everyone's saying, oh, I need to get the fix for a pixel, and like some people get it and utilize it, and other people aren't quite sure. My first point is make use of tracking pixels. Okay, if you haven't already, make sure you put things like the Facebook pixel and LinkedIn pixel on your website. You're going to ask me why. Okay, so why am I suggesting you get it in place? So I'm going to give you just 2 reasons, but there are many, many reasons, but I'm going to run out of time. So I'm just going to give you 2 reasons today. The first is for retargeting. Retargeting is where you show adverts to people across the internet based on what they've done on your website. So they might have visited your website, they might not have converted, but you kind of want to bring them back into the fold and remind them of your brand. So you might show them an advert on Facebook later in the day when they're just browsing through their Facebook feed. That's really important because we know, and I've mentioned it before, that there's a stepping stone approach to engaging with users, and it's often going to take 6 or 7 times or touch points with your brand to convert. And therefore, it's really important that we bring these users back into the fold through retargeting. So that's an obvious one, but I would just suggest that you do this intelligently. So don't just set up a retargeting campaign which is broad, but consider what the user did on your website and then adapt the retargeting ad accordingly. So putting this in practice, someone might have got some products in their basket and then abandoned the cart. So show them an advert to say, we understand that you've left some products in the basket, come back and kind of finish the order. That's far more relevant, yeah? Another example is someone might have been looking at, Nike trainers. So they're looking at Nike trainers and then they leave your website. Then show them adverts of your Nike trainers on your website, because that's what they're interested in. That's far more intelligent and will drive far more conversions than simply generic retargeting where you're just giving a more generic company advert. And the second and final thing to say on this is just make use of the LinkedIn pixel for insights. And I'm going to say, even if you don't use LinkedIn ads. Okay, so generally speaking, you'd use a pixel from one of these platforms if you're utilizing that platform through ads. In LinkedIn's environment, it's slightly different, and you might not want to run ads on LinkedIn, but actually still utilizing their pixel is really, really helpful, because what it does is it gathers data about the kind of people who visit your website. So you could find data such as their general job titles or ages or companies of the people who are visiting your website. And that, again, should be folded into your simple reports that you can review and make decisions on to improve your website. So retargeting and utilizing the LinkedIn pixel are just 2 of the recommendations I'm going to mention today. Number 9, accessibility. Okay, so this is something which so many websites don't take any consideration to whatsoever. Now, accessibility, I'm showing an example, I guess, on screen as to how this could look. Okay, so on the right-hand side, you'll see an icon. That's, I guess, a generic icon which might appear on the right-hand side of your website, and once clicked, it would open up this kind of fly-out box where you can adapt things like the font and the font size and just the contrast and other things like that. Now, this is really important for those who are not just visually impaired, but might have other disabilities, and they will always look for some sort of tool such as this. Now, I guess to kind of just to hit it on the head, this kind of whole accessibility topic is not just for particular websites. So it's not like just for public sector or not just for government type websites. I think all websites should consider accessibility in how in a relevant way for their particular audience. Sorry. So you could do that by following a particular standard. So there's obviously a common one throughout the industry, which is the WCAG 2.1 standard. And you might ask your web developer or agency to go through your website and make sure that the website complies with that guidance. Now, that's one way to do it, and that's absolutely fine. Another way is to maybe use an external platform such as UAccess, which is actually the one that I've shown on the previous slide. And this is a tool which would obviously plumb into your website and externally allow the user to change those things. So I just want to kind of, almost kind of bust a myth, should we say, and just say, let's all make sure that we consider accessibility on our websites, and hopefully there's some helpful tips on how to do that here. Okay, we're coming to number 10 now, which is a chatbot. Okay, so I'm going to start with a myth buster, because I fully appreciate that when you say chatbot, a lot of people might say, "Oh gosh, that's not for me. That's that's not for my website, etc." So if we just kind of look at some data first, right? So comparing 2018 to 2019, twice as many consumers were willing to engage with chatbots because they were very helpful. Okay, 74% of users prefer chatbots while looking for answers to simple questions. That's actually where I think they add most value, actually. 69% of consumers prefer to use chatbots because they deliver quick answers to simple questions, and that's from Salesforce. And 40% of buyers don't care if they're served by a bot or a human agent, as long as they get the support they need, and that's from HubSpot. So I just want to make sure that we're all aware, right, from day one, that chatbots are useful. They can be used in a wide variation of websites, and it is worth considering them when you're considering your website. So that's kind of like my myth buster. I just want to touch on one thing though, which is if you're looking to kind of go down this road, there's two tools which I'd recommend, because you can imagine there's many on the market. So you've got chatbot.com and Intercom. Both work in a slightly different way, but I guess the general principle is that you can set up almost frequently asked questions, whereby if a user asks a particular question, the chatbot will then respond with the answer which you've plumbed into it. And what you'll get is a long list of, like a tree of questions, shall we say, a category tree of questions where you're pumping into the chatbot lots of different questions, and it will spurt out those answers then to users. Now, some chatbots work on quite a pragmatic way where it's just Q&As, which you've entered into them, and others will use AI to be a little bit more intelligent. So as you can imagine, there's a range of platforms on the market which you might want to look into, but there's two here which will hopefully get you on your way. So chatbot, definitely worth using if you haven't already. So as I draw towards a close, I just want to say that less is more. So I've gone through 10 things today, which I think are kind of really useful to incorporate in any website. But look, we're not going to just implement all 10 straight away. I wouldn't advise that, okay? So, don't go back to your kind of teams and go, look, here's 10 things we're going to put on our website tomorrow. I think for every organization, it's worth cherry picking what would work for them, and making small steps and small improvements to take this forward. I just want to remind you as well that my first point was all about advanced tracking. And really, if that's not in place, that is imperative to any of this happening. So it's really important that you've got advanced tracking and data to hand, and simple reports which you can review, so that you can actually make informed decisions to improve the performance of your site. So let's go data first with this, and a less is more approach is certainly what I'd advise. So at this stage, you might be thinking, I'm not quite sure where to turn. So I just want to say I'm happy to help if I can. Just drop me an email, and I would be more than happy to look over your website and give an audit of the site. So if you want that, please feel free to drop me an email. Just put website audit request in the subject line, and between myself and my team, we will look over your website and we will run it through manual and automated platforms in order to benchmark it and come back to you with an audit, which will hopefully help you move forward. So as I said at the start, I'm more than happy to take any questions which you might have. We've just got a few minutes left. I'm just having a look at the time, so we're okay for time. So let me just open the chat and I'll see if we've got any questions there. Just 2 moments. Great. Okay, so I've got a question here from Elliot. So, what are pixels in terms of this webinar? Okay, so in terms, like in context of this webinar, I guess what I'm saying is for all websites to integrate with various pixels from particular channels. So that could be the Facebook pixel, the LinkedIn pixel. They're the two that I've mentioned today. And what that allows you to do is track from external platforms, how users are engaging with your website. And it also allows you then to show them ads through retargeting. So hopefully that's kind of putting it in context to this webinar, and certainly something which I think would be beneficial for all websites, regardless of the purpose of your site and your business. Okay, another question here. As a new business, what do you think are the quickest ways to generate relevant traffic? Okay, so if you're looking to generate traffic quickly from a new site, often, if it's brand new, the website will take a little while to index into Google, and then it'll take some time to kind of move up in the search engine results pages. So we would recommend using paid ads to bring that website to market quicker. And you can do that through a number of channels such as Google, Facebook, and LinkedIn. It's a really good way to get in front of your target audience, especially if you offer a service or product which people actively look for. So for example, if they're looking for a web developer, it's really good to actually appear in those searches because they're in the market for a web developer at that point. So yeah, kind of hopefully that answers the question. That would be the quickest way to drive relevant traffic. Subsequently, you could follow that up with other strategies such as SEO, SEM, and other things as well. Okay, so let's have a look here. There's quite a few things on the chat. I'm just going through them, sorry. Okay, so Michelle asks, could we share a recommended personalization tool? So I believe that's in the presentation, Michelle. So definitely Personalize would be the one that we would recommend. As you can imagine, there's many on the market, but we've used Personalize several times before, and it's one which works really well and is good to set up. Gosh, lots of chat. I've been talking away and I've missed it all. So it's really good to see people chatting on here. Okay, I think I've answered most of these questions now. Ultimately, if I've missed anything or if you've got any further questions after this presentation, please don't kind of hesitate to drop me a call after or drop me an email after. I'm more than happy to. Oh, sorry, there's one here more. Oh, sorry, yeah, so I've missed one question here. I'll answer it just whilst we're live on the webinar. So how important are backlinks and how do you recommend going about getting good quality ones? Okay, so backlinks are really important to a website. Ultimately, just for those that don't know, a backlink is where an external website links to yours, and it almost gives a bit of a recommendation or a thumbs up to Google that your website has some credibility because another website is linking to yours for a particular link term. Now, they're really important. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. It's obviously important that you do it in the right way. So obviously there are, particular, should we say, black hat ways to do it where you can purchase backlinks, and that's not what we'd recommend. But if you can actually partner with particular organizations who are happy to link to your website, or if you can gain backlinks through good content marketing, then that's the best way to do it. So backlinks are important. In summary, I would certainly say quality over quantity is what you want to go for there. Okay, so I think that's all the questions. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me on this webinar. I really appreciate your time this morning. Our details are here, so please just get involved. If you want to post anything on social, please use the hashtag #WebboxWebinar. If you want us to do a free website audit, then please drop me an email and connect with us on LinkedIn. So I'm more than happy to connect with you. But rest assured, I'll be in touch in the next day or two to share with you a copy of this recording and the presentation. So you'll hear from us soon. So yeah, thank you so much and hope you have a good rest of the day. Thanks.